Megumi returns and attacks Sukuna. A secret Sukuna cursed finger revealed, and the battle between Yuji and Sukuna enters its climax. I am so glad that JJK is back, so let's get into the hype. You guys know how this works. If you enjoy my JJK videos and you want to see more in the future, leave a quick like and comment for that YouTube algorithm. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. It is completely free, but it helps me out a lot. So in the last chapter, we had the extremely interesting reveal of Yuji's domain, and I don't think anyone could have expected what the true nature of his domain would be. All of us were expecting that Yuji's domain would be some kind of epic combat ability, but instead, he apparently just wanted to talk to Sukuna first, so instead of fighting, Yuji gave Sukuna a tour of the town that he grew up in. Yuji just kind of walked Sukuna through the places that he liked to visit as a kid, and he explained why he liked these places and why they meant a lot to him. Even though these were the type of conversations that Sukuna clearly wasn't interested in, he continued to go along with it for quite a while, which surprised a lot of us. And so I assumed that this was part of Yuji's domain abilities. Sukuna was somehow compelled to go along with it even though he didn't want to. My interpretation of this whole thing was that Yuji was trying to see if he could bring out the human side of Sukuna. He was trying to see if he could relate to Sukuna on a human level and get him to empathize with Yuji as well as with humanity in general. Because as you guys saw, a lot of the focus in the chapter was placed on the fact that change is an inevitable part of life, and change is something that humans have to accept even when they don't want to. Yuji was trying to see whether Sukuna would find any value in the little things in life, and whether he would acknowledge that human beings have value even if they're not like great warriors or kings. But Sukuna didn't really show any signs of that, and he eventually told Yuji that he's had enough and that he doesn't want to keep talking about these pointless things anymore. At that point, Yuji tells Sukuna outright that he hates him. He hates Sukuna because the King of Curses sees human beings as nothing more than tools, and he sees no value in human life. Sukuna again confirms that nothing that Yuji said is actually stirring any emotion within him. At the end of the previous chapter, and at the end of that lengthy conversation, Yuji said something shocking. Yuji said outright that he can kill Sukuna. But he offered to spare Sukuna's life if he agreed to free Megumi and return to Yuji's body instead. This just made Sukuna angry, and he vowed to kill Yuji and everyone he cares about. And on that cheerful note, the chapter came to an end. The new chapter starts off with Yuji apparently communicating with Megumi's soul. Oh, and by the way, this chapter goes back to the previous titling style, and it's called Inhuman Makio Shinjuku Showdown Part 37. However, at the end of the chapter, we are told that everything is about to change very soon, so definitely stay tuned for that. Anyway, Yuji is listening to what Megumi's soul is trying to tell him. Megumi says that he just wanted to create a world where his sister Tsumiki wouldn't have to suffer unjustly. He just wanted to live a simple life, eating meals he prepared, watching the laundry drying in the sun, and seeing Tsumiki living a good life alongside someone like Itadori, and walking together into the setting sun. It looks like Megumi secretly shipped his own sister with our boy Yuji. But the point is that these are the simple moments that Megumi was living for, but now after everything that happened, including the tragedy that happened to his sister, he's had enough. Megumi doesn't have the will to fight anymore. His soul has been crushed, and he doesn't see the point of living. His greatest dream, as simple as it was, can never be attained now, and his soul is clouded by despair and hopelessness. At first, Yuji was unable to understand Megumi's perspective, like why would he lose the will to fight when there was still a chance that he might win? Yuji compares it to his grandpa's situation. When his grandpa got sick, he refused to take the intense treatments that might have helped because they had really strong side effects. Yuji's grandpa likely felt that all the suffering that the side effects would bring about just weren't worth it, especially at his advanced age. Yuji didn't understand this perspective at first because, as we know, Yuji has far more strength and durability than the average human, so to him the idea of suffering physical side effects isn't really that scary. However, after coming to Jujutsu High and witnessing all the death and suffering in such a short period of time, Yuji started to understand and empathize with people who didn't want to keep fighting against horrible odds. Yuji says that even though he wants Megumi to keep fighting and help him defeat Sukuna, he won't tell Megumi to continue living. He will accept Megumi's decision no matter what it ends up being in the end, but he, Yuji, will continue to fight against all odds and against the King of Curses. We are then taken back to the battle between Yuji and Sukuna, and we see Sukuna activating Hollow Wicker Basket in order to counter the effects of Yuji's domain. And what are the exact effects of Yuji's domain? We still don't know, but we see that Sukuna is now back in his ultimate 4-armed form. And we also see that this fight is still taking place inside of the town that Yuji grew up in. Or I guess it's more accurate to say that it's happening at the farm just outside of town. This seems to confirm that the entire town is actually part of Yuji's domain, which is actually kind of insane when you think about it. Yuji's domain is so large and so elaborate that it encompasses an entire town, including all the buildings and the plants and animals and even the farms on the outskirts of town. This is certainly not just your average run-of-the-mill domain, and it's clear that Yuji's domain has some unique properties that Sukuna isn't used to. This might be why Yuji told Sukuna that he has the power to kill him, and it might also be why Sukuna feels that Yuji was acting like he pities him, which is something that made Sukuna extremely angry. As Sukuna and Yuji approach each other and prepare to engage in battle, Sukuna thinks that it would be too risky for him to try to use Gojo's technique of destroying and restoring his brain in order to reset the cursed energy output. Since Sukuna's brain is still suffering the effects of Unlimited Void, trying out this risky technique now could be deadly. Because of this, Sukuna is trying to resist the effects of the domain by using Hollow Wicker Basket. But this technique can only delay the time until the guaranteed hit within the domain begins to take effect, and it will eventually be overpowered. Sukuna is trying to compensate for this by continuing to form hand signs even after activating Hollow Wicker Basket. This apparently allows him to continue fighting without being overpowered by Yuji's domain. Sukuna and Yuji finally reach each other and an intense battle begins. The animals in the area are disturbed by the fighting and they begin to flee, so hopefully no imaginary geese were harmed during the making of this chapter. At first, the two fighters exchange some big blows, but they manage to either block or dodge most of them. Then Sukuna manages to land a massive hit on Yuji, sending him flying backwards. But Yuji manages to regain his footing. He stands up to face Sukuna once again, although the right side of his face was clearly injured by Sukuna's attack. Sukuna has a maniacal smile on his face, and he says that he was genuinely surprised by how furious he became when he felt that Yuji was looking down on him and pitying him. He says that he's thrilled at the thought of someone other than Yuji being forced to make amends for this. The implication here is that Sukuna intends to make the people Yuji cares about suffer, starting with Megumi, the very person that Yuji had asked Sukuna to spare in the previous chapter. We then briefly see a young Megumi turning around and saying, "Huh, what's with that face?" as adult Yuji looks down on him. Yuji says, "Nothing, it's just that it won't be as lively without you, Fushiguro." As he says this, we see that Yuji has tears in his eyes. So this suggests that Yuji might now be accepting that Megumi is gone and that he won't be able to save him after all. And yet, the very next page begins with a twist. We see Sukuna suddenly beginning to sink into a pool of dark liquid with genuine confusion on his face. Is this Megumi activating his 10 Shadows technique in order to fight back against Sukuna? Did Yuji actually do it? Did he somehow manage to reawaken Megumi? Sukuna is wondering the same thing. Did Yuji's dismantle return Megumi's soul to life? With Sukuna distracted, Yuji is able to reach him and deliver a massive punch to his face, which sends him flying. Now this one punch is far from enough to take Sukuna down, but something seems to have changed, because we see Yuji actually smiling before he springs into action and launches yet another assault on Sukuna. We see Yuji delivering a powerful and unbelievably quick barrage of punches to Sukuna's face and body, and it looks like Yuji is doing some real damage to the King of Curses. Now of course, Sukuna is no chump, so he does manage to fight back against Yuji, and yet Yuji refuses to let up, which leads both Sukuna and Yuji to punch each other in the head and in the body over and over again at the same time. But even though both of them are fighting intensely, Yuji seems to have the advantage and Sukuna's Hollow Wicker Basket begins to crumble and fall apart under the force of Yuji's blows. Sukuna knows he's in trouble, so he decides to take a big risk. With Hollow Wicker Basket falling apart, he has to use Gojo's high-risk technique. He has to destroy a part of his own brain so that he can use RCT to restore it, thereby resetting his cursed energy burnout. The gamble seems to pay off for Sukuna, because on the very next page he unleashes his own domain expansion as a way to counter Yuji's domain. We see that Yuji has lost the strange demonic armor on his left hand, as well as 2 of his fingers, presumably from all the merciless punching and from Sukuna's slashes. But it's worth noting that Yuji's fingers don't seem to have flesh blood flowing from them, meaning that Yuji might have lost his fingers before this, or he might have intentionally cut them off for some specific purpose. The final page shows a massive spiral staircase and presumably another one of Sukuna's fingers hanging suspended over it. The narration in the final panel says, "What's with this finger? Next time, the climax of the Shinjuku Showdown," featuring cover and opening color page. So there is still another Sukuna finger left? We thought that they were all located already and that Yuta had used the final one, but maybe that wasn't the case. Apparently, there is still one more finger left, and this finger will likely decide the entire fight. If Sukuna gets his hands on it, he will be even stronger and he will win. But if Yuji can get his hands on it first, he could use it to win this fight and defeat Sukuna once and for all. Now, there are some people who believe that this mysterious finger could be one of Yuji's 2 missing fingers, and that he secretly turned his own fingers into cursed tools, but I'm not sure why exactly Yuji would do that, and what exactly that would mean. If you guys have some ideas about what is going on with the finger, please let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear some cool theories and ideas, because clearly this finger will play an important role in this battle. Did Yuji cut off his own fingers and turn them into cursed tools, and maybe give those to Yuta, thereby leaving the final Sukuna finger so that he can use it in the climax of the battle? Did Yuji do something else with his own fingers? Yuji giving his own fingers to Yuta makes more sense to me because that finger we see at the end does not look like it belongs to Yuji. If you look at where Yuji's fingers were cut, you will see that the finger at the end appears to be significantly longer, meaning that it should be Sukuna's and not Yuji's, but we'll have to wait for confirmation in the next chapter. If you are looking for another epic JJK video to watch next, check out my review from last week, which breaks down all the subtle psychology of Yuji's domain. Link on screen and in the description. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more in the future, leave a like to let me know. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. It's completely free, but it helps me out a lot.